The fastest way to misjudge a person is to believe a moment tells you their entire story. Morning sunlight reflected across the polished black paint of the luxury sedan parked along a quiet street in Buckhead, Atlanta, turning the sleek vehicle into a mirror that captured the glass towers, blooming trees, and steady rhythm of another ordinary weekday. Commuters hurried toward office buildings carrying coffee cups and briefcases while joggers passed beneath rows of oak trees lining the sidewalks. Luxury stores had only begun opening their doors, and the calm atmosphere carried the familiar confidence of one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods. Sitting behind the wheel of the sedan was Marcus Reed, a 42-year-old black man wearing a simple charcoal jacket over a light blue button-down shirt. He did not look like someone eager to attract attention. One hand rested lightly on the steering wheel while the other lay beside a leather folder placed neatly on the passenger seat. He occasionally glanced toward the elegant hotel entrance across the street before checking the digital clock displayed on the dashboard. 9:26. He quietly exhaled. For more minutes. That timing mattered far more than anyone passing the vehicle could possibly understand. Marcus never reached for the folder. He never opened the center console. He simply waited with remarkable patience, allowing the city to continue moving around him. Then the flashing blue lights appeared in the rearview mirror. Within seconds, a white patrol vehicle stopped behind the luxury sedan, its emergency lights reflecting across the polished trunk. Pedestrians slowed their pace. A nearby valet paused while helping a guest with luggage. Conversations softened as curious eyes turned toward the unexpected traffic stop. Marcus calmly placed both hands where they could easily be seen and looked into the mirror without the slightest sign of panic. Officer Ryan Walker stepped out of the patrol car wearing a neatly pressed police uniform, his posture confident as he approached the driver's side. His attention remained fixed on Marcus long before he reached the window. Marcus lowered the window before the officer even spoke. "Good morning, officer," he said politely. Ryan offered a brief nod. "Good morning. May I ask you to step out of the vehicle?" Marcus looked at him with quiet curiosity rather than resistance. "May I ask why?" Ryan glanced slowly across the luxurious interior before answering. "We received a report concerning suspicious activity involving this vehicle." The words immediately caught the attention of several pedestrians standing nearby. A woman walking her dog stopped beside a flower bed. Two office workers slowed their pace while pretending to continue their conversation. A delivery driver leaned against his van with folded arms, quietly observing the encounter. Marcus remained completely composed. "I understand," he replied. "And what would you like me to do?" Ryan gestured politely toward the sidewalk. "Please step out of the vehicle while we verify a few things." Marcus nodded once before opening the driver's door. Every movement remained slow, deliberate, and respectful. He stepped onto the sidewalk, closed the door carefully behind him, and stood beside the sedan with calm confidence. There was no frustration in his expression, no argument, no visible concern. His composure somehow unsettled Ryan more than protest ever could have. Most people questioned every instruction. Marcus accepted them without complaint. "Is this your vehicle?" Ryan asked. Marcus paused for only a moment. "I am responsible for it this morning." The answer sounded truthful, yet incomplete. Ryan looked carefully at him. "Responsible in what way?" Marcus smiled politely. "That is something I can explain very soon." The response only deepened the officer's suspicion. A young man across the street quietly lifted his phone. Another person followed. Within moments, several bystanders had begun recording the unusual scene. Marcus noticed none of them. His attention drifted briefly toward the digital dashboard visible through the windshield. 9:27. 3 minutes remained. Then the large center display inside the luxury sedan suddenly illuminated. The incoming call notification appeared across the screen in bold letters bright enough to be seen through the windshield. Marcus did not move toward the vehicle. He simply watched the screen for a brief moment before returning his attention to Officer Ryan Walker. The words glowing on the dashboard were impossible to ignore. "Chief calling." Marcus Reed kept his eyes on the illuminated dashboard for only a second before the incoming call disappeared on its own. He made no effort to return to the driver's seat or answer it. Instead, he calmly folded his hands in front of him and looked back at Officer Ryan Walker. The silence that followed seemed louder than the traffic moving through Buckhead. Ryan glanced through the windshield toward the center display where the words had just disappeared. Was someone trying to reach you? He asked. Marcus answered without hesitation. Yes. Would you like to return the call? Marcus gently shook his head. Not yet. The response immediately deepened Ryan's curiosity. Most people would have reached for the phone without thinking. Marcus acted as though the missed call had not changed anything. Nearby, more pedestrians slowed their pace. A businessman carrying a laptop case quietly stopped beside a newspaper stand. Two women leaving a nearby coffee shop exchanged curious glances before looking toward the luxury sedan. The atmosphere remained calm, yet every passing minute attracted another pair of watching eyes. Ryan looked carefully at Marcus before speaking again. You said you are responsible for this vehicle this morning. Can you explain exactly what you meant? Marcus offered the same composed expression he had maintained from the beginning. I will explain everything very soon. Ryan folded his arms. Why not now? Marcus briefly looked toward the elegant hotel entrance across the street. Because someone is depending on the timing. Ryan followed his eyes toward the hotel, but saw nothing unusual. Guests entered through revolving glass doors. Valets welcomed arriving visitors. Bell staff rolled luggage carts across the front drive. Everything appeared perfectly ordinary. Who was depending on the timing? Ryan asked. Marcus answered honestly. Someone whose schedule matters more than mine. The reply only created more questions. Ryan slowly walked around the front of the luxury sedan, studying the immaculate condition of the vehicle. The polished paint reflected the surrounding buildings like black glass. The license plate matched the registration information already displayed on his patrol computer, yet something about the situation still felt incomplete. Marcus watched him quietly without making a single unnecessary movement. He had spent years learning that patience often protected opportunities that explanations could accidentally destroy. Across the street, a hotel employee stepped outside carrying a clipboard before speaking briefly with another staff member near the entrance. Marcus noticed the exchange immediately. It was one of several details he had been quietly observing since arriving 20 minutes earlier. Ryan noticed none of it. Do you have the keys? The officer asked. Marcus reached slowly into the pocket of his jacket and removed the electronic key fob before holding it in the palm of his open hand, where Ryan could clearly see it. Yes. May I ask why you are waiting here instead of going inside? Marcus smiled faintly. Because I was asked to remain with the vehicle. By whom? Marcus paused for only a moment. The right person. Ryan sighed quietly. You keep giving answers that sound truthful without actually answering the question. Marcus nodded respectfully. I understand why it feels that way. A light breeze carried flowering petals across the sidewalk as another luxury vehicle pulled into the hotel entrance before continuing toward the valet stand. The digital clock inside the sedan changed from 9:27 to 9:28. Marcus noticed it immediately. 2 minutes remained. He quietly exhaled, not from nervousness, but from awareness that every passing second brought the morning closer to the moment he had been waiting for. Ryan noticed the glance toward the dashboard. You keep checking the time, he observed. I do, Marcus admitted. Why? Marcus looked directly at him. Because after the next 2 minutes, this conversation will become much easier for both of us. Before Ryan could respond, the luxury sedan's display illuminated once more. The incoming call returned, brighter than before. Marcus remained exactly where he stood without taking a single step toward the vehicle. Ryan instinctively looked through the windshield again. The same 2 words appeared across the display, impossible to overlook. Chief calling. Marcus Reed watched the illuminated display fade once again before the screen returned to its normal dashboard view. He never reached for the door handle. He never unlocked the vehicle. Instead, he remained standing beside the luxury sedan with the same calm expression that had puzzled Officer Ryan Walker from the very beginning. The officer looked through the windshield one more time before turning back toward Marcus. Someone calling themselves Chief seems determined to reach you, Ryan said. Marcus answered quietly. Yes. Why do you keep ignoring the calls? Marcus looked briefly toward the hotel entrance before responding. Because the person calling already knows exactly where I am. Ryan narrowed his eyes slightly. Then why would they keep calling? Marcus smiled politely. To make sure everything stays on schedule. The explanation sounded simple, yet Ryan could not fit it into the picture he had formed when responding to the report. He had expected nervousness, conflicting answers, or obvious signs that something was wrong. Instead, Marcus remained remarkably consistent. Every answer matched the last one. Every movement reflected patience instead of panic. That consistency should have eased Ryan's concerns, yet it somehow encouraged him to continue searching for what he believed he had not yet discovered. Across the street, a black sport utility vehicle quietly entered the circular driveway of the hotel before disappearing beneath the covered entrance. Valet attendants immediately moved into position while hotel staff welcomed arriving guests with practiced professionalism. Marcus noticed the arrival without changing his posture. The timing matched exactly what he had expected. 9:28. Less than 2 minutes remained. Ryan followed Marcus's gaze toward the hotel. "Are you waiting for someone inside?" he asked. Marcus answered truthfully. "Someone will come out very soon." "Who?" Marcus paused for only a moment. "The person this vehicle belongs with." Ryan looked back at the luxury sedan, then at Marcus. "Earlier you said you were responsible for the vehicle." "I am. Now you are saying it belongs with someone else." Marcus nodded. "Both statements are true." The officer slowly exhaled, trying to reconcile answers that seemed incomplete yet never sounded dishonest. Nearby, another pedestrian slowed to watch the conversation. A woman carrying shopping bags quietly stopped beside a decorative fountain while pretending to check a text message. A pair of hotel guests standing near the entrance turned their attention toward the luxury sedan after noticing the patrol vehicle parked behind it. Without realizing it, a small audience had begun forming on the sidewalk. Marcus ignored every curious glance. His focus remained on the hotel entrance and the passing seconds. A gentle breeze carried leaves across the pavement as the city continued moving around them. Expensive cars arrived and departed. Business professionals crossed the street with coffee in hand. Somewhere nearby, church bells marked the quarter hour. Everything appeared ordinary, yet Marcus understood that one delayed moment could quietly alter an entire morning. Ryan studied the leather folder still resting on the passenger seat through the side window. "May I ask what is inside that folder?" Marcus answered immediately. "Documents. Personal documents. Important documents." Ryan looked at him. "You have a habit of answering questions without answering them." Marcus offered a faint smile. "Sometimes a complete answer has to wait for the right moment." The officer was about to ask another question when the dashboard illuminated once more. This time the incoming call lasted only a few seconds before ending automatically. Marcus never moved toward it. Instead, his eyes shifted to the digital clock. 9:29. 1 minute remained. He quietly drew a slow breath, knowing the wait was almost over. Ryan noticed the change in his expression. It was not relief. It was quiet certainty. Before either man spoke again, the revolving doors of the hotel opened, and several people in business attire stepped into the morning sunlight, their attention immediately searching the street beyond the valet stand. Marcus Reed watched the group emerging from the revolving hotel doors with quiet focus, but his expression never changed. Several executives in dark business suits crossed the front driveway, while hotel staff held the doors open with practiced courtesy. A chauffeur rolled a luggage cart toward a waiting sedan, and a valet greeted arriving guests with a welcoming smile. To everyone standing along the sidewalk, it looked like another ordinary morning in Buckhead. Marcus knew better. Somewhere within the steady rhythm of those routine movements was the person he had been waiting for since arriving nearly half an hour earlier. Officer Ryan Walker followed Marcus's line of sight, but failed to notice anything unusual. "Are any of those people the person you have been talking about?" he asked. Marcus answered honestly. "Not yet." Ryan folded his arms and looked back toward the luxury sedan. "Then I still need to understand why you are here." Marcus glanced at the digital clock through the windshield. 9:29. Less than 60 seconds remained. "You will," he replied. "Very soon." Ryan slowly shook his head. "You keep asking me to wait." Marcus nodded respectfully. "Because the timing matters." "To whom?" "To someone who trusted me with an important responsibility." The answer lingered between them. A light breeze moved through the trees lining the sidewalk, scattering a few leaves across the pavement as pedestrians continued slowing to watch the unusual conversation. A pair of tourists quietly stopped near the decorative fountain, pretending to study a city map while stealing occasional glances toward the patrol vehicle and the luxury sedan. Across the street, another office employee paused with a cup of coffee in hand, curiosity replacing the rush of the workday. Ryan noticed the growing crowd and quietly spoke into the radio attached to his shoulder, requesting another officer to pass through the area if available. His voice remained calm and professional, but Marcus immediately understood the consequence. Additional attention was exactly what he had hoped to avoid. The person leaving the hotel needed to walk toward the vehicle naturally, without believing the area had become the center of police activity. Marcus looked toward the hotel entrance once more. A man wearing a gray business suit stepped outside carrying a leather portfolio before stopping to check his watch. Another guest emerged behind him, speaking on a mobile phone. Neither of them was the person Marcus expected. Ryan observed Marcus carefully. "You seem concerned that I called for another unit." Marcus answered with complete honesty. "I am concerned that too much attention changes people's decisions." "Whose decisions?" "Someone who has every reason to be cautious." Ryan studied his face again. There was still no sign of deception. Only patience. Only quiet confidence. Those qualities somehow made the unanswered questions feel even larger. The digital display inside the luxury sedan suddenly illuminated for the fourth time. Once again, the same incoming call appeared across the screen. "Chief calling." This time the notification remained active several seconds longer before fading away. Marcus never reached for the vehicle. Instead, he quietly removed a small leather key holder from his jacket pocket and held it loosely in his hand. Ryan noticed it immediately. "Those are the vehicle keys?" Marcus nodded. "Yes." "You have had them the entire time?" "Yes." "Why did you not mention that sooner?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Because you never asked." Ryan almost replied before stopping himself. The answer was technically true. He had assumed rather than confirmed. That realization lingered in his thoughts as the digital clock changed to exactly 9:30. At that precise moment, the revolving hotel doors opened once again. This time, a distinguished man in a tailored dark suit stepped into the morning sunlight, accompanied by two members of his executive staff. He paused only briefly before looking directly across the street. His eyes immediately found Marcus standing beside the luxury sedan, and a warm expression of recognition crossed his face as he started walking toward the waiting vehicle with calm, unmistakable purpose. The distinguished man continued walking across the quiet street with measured confidence, accompanied by two members of his executive staff who remained a respectful distance behind him. Every step seemed deliberate, yet there was nothing dramatic about his movement. He looked exactly like someone arriving for an ordinary appointment. Marcus Reed watched him approach without changing his calm posture. After waiting nearly 30 minutes, the moment he had carefully protected was finally unfolding exactly as planned. Officer Ryan Walker noticed the approaching group, but saw only another professionally dressed executive leaving the hotel. Nothing about the man's appearance suggested he had any connection to the situation unfolding beside the luxury sedan. "Do you know him?" Ryan asked. Marcus answered simply, "Yes." "Is he the person you have been waiting for?" Marcus nodded once. "He is." Ryan followed the approaching figure with growing curiosity. The man smiled warmly the moment his eyes met Marcus, then raised one hand in a familiar greeting before continuing across the sidewalk. Marcus returned the gesture with a quiet nod, but remained exactly where he stood. The luxury sedan, the leather folder on the passenger seat, and the electronic key fob resting in his hand had all remained untouched since the officer first arrived. None of it had been accidental. Across the street, several pedestrians noticed the approaching executive and instinctively stepped aside to give him room to pass. The hotel valet also recognized him immediately, offering a polite greeting as he walked by. Marcus quietly observed every movement while remaining aware of Ryan standing beside him. The officer looked from Marcus to the approaching man and back again, still unable to understand how the pieces fit together. "You could have explained this earlier," Ryan said. Marcus answered with the same patience he had shown all morning, not without changing what needed to happen first. Ryan looked puzzled. What exactly needed to happen? Marcus glanced briefly toward the leather folder resting inside the vehicle. A meeting that depended on trust. The officer slowly considered those words. He remembered every answer Marcus had given since the beginning. None of them had been false. They had simply been incomplete. Nearby, another patrol vehicle slowly turned onto the street in response to Ryan's earlier radio request before parking a short distance away. The arriving officer remained inside, observing without interrupting while waiting for further instructions. Marcus quietly noticed the second patrol car, but did not react. His attention remained focused on the distinguished man, now only a few yards away. The executive staff accompanying him stopped several steps behind, allowing him to continue forward alone. Ryan instinctively straightened his posture as the man approached, assuming he might simply be another witness curious about the unusual traffic stop. Instead, the man smiled directly at Marcus before speaking in a warm, familiar voice. "Thank you for waiting exactly where I asked you to." Marcus smiled for the first time that morning. Of course. Ryan looked between the two men, sensing that the entire situation was about to change. Before he could ask another question, the distinguished man briefly glanced toward the luxury sedan and then toward Marcus's hand still holding the electronic key fob. "Everything remained on schedule?" he asked. Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir. The vehicle has not been moved since I arrived." The man smiled with quiet satisfaction. "Excellent." Ryan's confusion deepened. Whoever this individual was, he clearly expected Marcus to be standing beside the luxury sedan at precisely 9:30. The timing, the unanswered calls, the repeated glances toward the clock, and Marcus's remarkable patience suddenly felt connected in ways Ryan had not considered. The distinguished man finally turned toward Ryan with a courteous smile, extending his hand in greeting before calmly introducing himself. "Good morning, officer. I believe we should probably talk before anyone reaches another conclusion." Officer Ryan Walker accepted the offered handshake with professional courtesy, although the growing uncertainty on his face was impossible to hide. The distinguished man returned the handshake with a calm smile before glancing toward Marcus Reed. "I appreciate your patience," he said warmly. Marcus nodded. Everything remained exactly as planned. Ryan looked between them. "I am sorry, sir, but I do not believe we have met." The man reached into the inside pocket of his tailored jacket and removed a slim leather credential holder. He opened it slowly, allowing Ryan to read the identification without rushing the moment. Ryan's eyes moved across the polished badge and official credentials, then immediately returned to the man's face. His expression changed completely. Standing before him was Chief Harold Bennett, the chief of police for the city. For several seconds, Ryan remained silent. He instinctively straightened his posture before offering a respectful greeting. "Chief Bennett." The chief smiled politely. "Good morning, Officer Walker." The small crowd gathered along the sidewalk quietly watched the exchange without fully understanding what had just happened. Some recognized the chief immediately. Others simply noticed the sudden change in Ryan's posture and realized the situation was very different from what they had first imagined. Chief Bennett turned toward the luxury sedan before looking back at Marcus. "Thank you for bringing the vehicle exactly where we agreed." Marcus handed him the electronic key fob with quiet professionalism. "It was ready several minutes ago. I remained here after receiving your calls because I believed stepping away would only create confusion." Chief Bennett accepted the keys with an understanding smile. "You made the right decision." Ryan listened carefully, replaying the entire morning in his mind. The repeated incoming calls, the unanswered phone, the careful attention to the clock, the calm refusal to leave the vehicle. Every detail suddenly formed a complete picture. Marcus had never been trying to avoid questions. He had been protecting a carefully arranged schedule. Chief Bennett noticed Ryan's thoughtful expression and spoke with the calm confidence of an experienced leader. "Marcus has assisted our department for years on community transportation and executive scheduling. This vehicle was assigned to him this morning because I had an early meeting at the hotel and needed it delivered here before another official event." Ryan looked toward Marcus. "So you were never taking the vehicle for yourself?" Marcus smiled gently. "No, officer. I was simply following the instructions I had been given." Ryan quietly lowered his eyes for a moment. "I understand now." Chief Bennett looked at the officer with neither disappointment nor anger. "Officer Walker, responding to a report is part of your responsibility. Every call deserves attention." Ryan nodded gratefully, relieved to hear those words. The chief continued in the same calm tone. "But every situation also deserves patience. Facts often arrive one piece at a time." Marcus remained silent beside the sedan, allowing the conversation to unfold naturally. He had no interest in proving anyone wrong. The successful completion of the morning's responsibility mattered far more than personal recognition. Around them, the atmosphere along the sidewalk slowly changed. Several people who had been quietly recording lowered their phones. The businessman near the newspaper stand folded his arms with a thoughtful expression. The valet returned to greeting arriving hotel guests as though the morning had finally returned to normal. Even the officer sitting inside the second patrol vehicle remained where he was after hearing over the radio that additional assistance was no longer required. Chief Bennett opened the driver's door of the luxury sedan before pausing beside Marcus once more. "There is one more folder inside that I need before we leave." Marcus nodded. "It is on the passenger seat exactly where I left it." Chief Bennett reached inside and picked up the leather folder without disturbing anything else. He held it briefly before turning back toward Ryan. "Everything Marcus told you this morning was truthful. He simply honored the responsibility I asked him to carry." Ryan looked at Marcus with genuine respect, replacing the certainty he had displayed only minutes earlier. For the first time that morning, he realized the quiet confidence standing beside the luxury sedan had never been hiding the truth. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to allow the truth to reveal itself. Chief Harold Bennett carefully closed the driver's door of the luxury sedan after placing the leather folder inside, then turned back toward Officer Ryan Walker with the same calm expression that had remained unchanged since he stepped out of the hotel. The morning traffic continued flowing through Buckhead as though nothing remarkable had happened, yet everyone gathered along the sidewalk understood they had just witnessed a moment that completely changed the story they thought they were watching. Ryan remained standing beside Marcus Reed, quietly replaying every decision he had made since arriving behind the black sedan. The unanswered calls, the repeated glances toward the clock, the patient responses, and the simple statement that he was responsible for the vehicle had all been true from the beginning. He had simply interpreted them through assumptions instead of complete information. Chief Bennett noticed the thoughtful silence and spoke with quiet sincerity. "Officer Walker, thank you for responding to the report. Every officer has a responsibility to investigate situations that appear unusual." Ryan looked up respectfully. "Thank you, Chief." Bennett continued without changing his tone. "The challenge is remembering that the first explanation we imagine is not always the correct one." Ryan nodded slowly. "I understand that now." Marcus remained beside the sedan with relaxed shoulders, allowing the conversation to unfold naturally. He had never wanted anyone to feel embarrassed. His only goal had been to complete the responsibility entrusted to him exactly as promised. Chief Bennett turned toward Marcus with a grateful smile. "You handled this morning with remarkable professionalism." Marcus answered quietly. "I only followed the instructions you gave me." "You also protected everyone's dignity while doing it." Marcus glanced briefly toward Ryan before replying. "That matters just as much." Those simple words carried more weight than anyone expected. Several bystanders who had quietly recorded the encounter lowered their phones completely. A woman walking her dog smiled gently before continuing down the sidewalk. The businessman standing near the newspaper stand folded his paper under one arm and quietly resumed his walk toward the office district. The curiosity that had drawn people together slowly gave way to quiet reflection. Ryan looked directly at Marcus. "Mr. Reed, I owe you an apology." Marcus met his eyes with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout the morning. "Thank you, officer." Ryan continued. "You answered every question respectfully, and I still assumed there was something I was missing because I reached conclusions too quickly." Marcus nodded once. "Sometimes we all do." Ryan paused before speaking again. "I appreciate that you never responded with anger." Marcus smiled faintly. "The truth usually speaks louder than frustration." Chief Bennett quietly observed the exchange with visible approval. "That is exactly why Marcus has earned the trust of so many people in this department," he said. "Character reveals itself most clearly when circumstances become difficult." Ryan reflected on those words while looking once more at the luxury sedan. Earlier that morning, he had seen only an expensive vehicle and a man he believed did not belong behind its wheel. Now he saw something entirely different. He saw responsibility, trust, and a professional relationship built over years instead of minutes. The second patrol officer stepped out of the nearby cruiser after receiving confirmation that everything had been resolved. Ryan briefly explained the situation, and the officer simply nodded with understanding before wishing everyone a safe day and returning to patrol. There were no raised voices, no dramatic confrontation, and no celebration. only professionals acknowledging facts that had finally become clear. Chief Bennett checked his watch before looking toward Marcus once more. "We should leave for the next meeting." Marcus nodded. "Everything is ready." Bennett extended his hand toward Ryan before entering the vehicle. "Have a safe shift, officer." Ryan accepted the handshake respectfully. "You as well, Chief." As Marcus walked around the front of the sedan toward the passenger side, he glanced once at the bright morning sky above Buckhead. The entire misunderstanding had lasted only a few minutes, yet the lesson it carried would remain far longer. Sometimes the strongest demonstration of character was not proving someone wrong. It was allowing patience, respect, and truth to arrive together at exactly the right moment. The black luxury sedan pulled smoothly away from the curb, disappearing into the steady flow of Buckhead traffic while the quiet morning gradually returned to its familiar rhythm. Chief Harold Bennett drove toward the next official meeting with Marcus Reed seated beside him, the leather folder resting securely between them. Neither man spoke for the first few moments. There was no need. The responsibility they had shared that morning had been completed exactly as intended. Behind them, Officer Ryan Walker remained standing on the sidewalk, watching the sedan disappear around the corner before slowly lowering his gaze. The second patrol officer approached him with quiet curiosity. "Everything all right?" Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, better than all right. I learned something today." His partner waited without interrupting. Ryan looked once more toward the empty space where the luxury sedan had been parked only minutes earlier. Sometimes we think we are investigating a situation when we are really investigating our own assumptions. His partner considered those words before giving a respectful nod. That is a lesson worth remembering. Nearby, the small crowd that had gathered gradually dispersed. The businessman returned to his walk toward the office towers. The tourists folded their city map and continued exploring Atlanta. The woman walking her dog smiled politely at Ryan before crossing the street. Even the valet staff returned to welcoming arriving guests as if nothing unusual had ever happened. Life moved forward with remarkable ease, yet everyone who had witnessed the encounter carried away a slightly different understanding of what they had seen. Inside the sedan, Chief Bennett glanced toward Marcus with quiet appreciation. "I regret that your morning became more complicated than it should have." Marcus smiled gently. The responsibility was never difficult. Waiting was simply part of it. Bennett nodded. Many people would have become frustrated. Marcus looked out the window at the passing streets lined with trees and elegant storefronts. Frustration would not have changed the truth. It only would have delayed it. The chief smiled. "That is exactly why I trusted you with the vehicle." Marcus appreciated the compliment, but simply looked ahead. Recognition had never been the reason he accepted the responsibility. Trust was. At the same time, Officer Ryan quietly returned to his patrol vehicle and completed the incident report while every detail remained fresh in his memory. He carefully described the events exactly as they had occurred, making certain that every observation reflected facts rather than assumptions. Before submitting the report, he paused over one final sentence, reading it twice before pressing send. Accuracy mattered because fairness depended upon it. A few moments later, his radio crackled with an update from dispatch confirming that no further action was required. Ryan acknowledged the transmission before starting the engine. As he pulled away from the curb, he caught one final glimpse of the hotel entrance in his rearview mirror. The sidewalk looked exactly as it had before the encounter began. Office workers hurried toward meetings. Visitors entered the hotel. Morning sunlight reflected across polished windows. Nothing in the scene suggested that an important lesson had quietly unfolded there only minutes earlier. Yet Ryan knew he would remember that location for years. Not because of the luxury sedan, not because of the chief, but because a calm man had answered every question with honesty while demonstrating that patience often revealed what certainty could not. Somewhere farther ahead, Marcus and Chief Bennett arrived at their destination ready to continue the day's responsibilities without mentioning the misunderstanding again. The morning had never been about proving anyone wrong. It had always been about keeping a promise, honoring trust, and completing a simple assignment with professionalism. Sometimes the greatest victories were invisible to everyone except the people whose lives quietly moved forward because someone else chose integrity over pride. And on that bright Atlanta morning, respect became the only destination that truly mattered. The afternoon sun gradually climbed higher above the Atlanta skyline as Chief Harold Bennett guided the black luxury sedan through the city's quiet streets toward police headquarters. Marcus Reed sat comfortably in the passenger seat, watching familiar neighborhoods pass by without saying much. There was a peaceful satisfaction in knowing that the responsibility entrusted to him had been completed exactly as promised. The misunderstanding that had briefly interrupted the morning no longer carried any weight. The assignment had been finished, the chief had arrived on schedule, and another ordinary day continued without unnecessary attention. Chief Bennett glanced toward Marcus with a grateful smile. "I appreciate everything you did today," he said. Marcus answered with the same quiet humility that had defined him from the very beginning. "I simply honored the trust you placed in me." Bennett nodded thoughtfully. Trust is earned over years, but it can disappear in moments if people stop treating one another with respect. Marcus looked through the windshield toward the busy streets ahead. That is why respect has to come before assumptions. Those simple words lingered inside the vehicle as both men reflected on the events of the morning. Back in Buckhead, Officer Ryan Walker continued his patrol, but his perspective had quietly changed. Every passing vehicle, every pedestrian waiting at an intersection, and every conversation with a stranger now reminded him that appearances rarely revealed the complete story. Later that afternoon, he stopped to assist an elderly driver whose car had stalled at a traffic light. Instead of beginning with suspicion, he began with a simple question. "How can I help you today?" The grateful smile he received reminded him that professionalism was measured not only by enforcing the law, but also by earning public confidence one respectful conversation at a time. Before ending his shift, Ryan visited his supervising lieutenant to discuss the morning encounter. He explained every detail honestly, including the conclusions he had reached too quickly. The lieutenant listened carefully before offering a quiet nod. "Experience teaches procedures," he said. "Reflection teaches wisdom. Keep both." Ryan left the office carrying those words with him, understanding that the lesson would shape every future interaction more than any formal training course ever could. Across town, Chief Bennett concluded his meetings and paused outside headquarters before Marcus prepared to leave for the day. The chief extended his hand once more. "Thank you again." Marcus accepted the handshake with a warm smile. "It was an honor. I hope you know how much the department values your integrity." Marcus answered softly. "Integrity only matters when we practice it every day." They parted with mutual respect, each returning to different responsibilities connected by the same commitment to serving others with dignity. As evening approached, the streets of Atlanta filled with commuters heading home. Restaurants welcomed families for dinner, and the luxury sedan that had briefly become the center of unwanted attention disappeared into the ordinary rhythm of city life. Nothing about the vehicle seemed remarkable anymore. It had become exactly what it had always been, simply another car traveling through another American city. Only the people who had witnessed that morning understood how easily an ordinary moment could have become something very different if patience had been replaced by pride. The bystanders who had quietly recorded the encounter remembered not a confrontation, but a lesson. The hotel staff remembered a man who remained calm under pressure. Officer Ryan remembered that confidence should never replace curiosity. Chief Bennett remembered why trustworthy people deserved responsibility. Marcus remembered only that another promise had been kept. Long after the details of the morning faded, one truth remained clear to everyone whose path had crossed that black luxury sedan. Authority may attract attention, wealth may invite assumptions, and appearances may influence first impressions, but character is revealed only through actions. Real respect does not wait until someone proves their importance. It begins the moment we choose to see another person with fairness, patience, and dignity. Because in the end, the strongest badge anyone can carry is not displayed on a uniform or placed on the hood of an expensive car. It is reflected in the quiet decision to treat every person with equal respect before the truth has a chance to introduce itself.